Hello guys, welcome to a new video. Today I'm going to talk about analyzing and realizing your morphology. So, first off, how long are your limbs? You have things like ape index, which means how long are your arms in comparison to your whole body, and the difference that makes in your arm work and arm training. Uh, it's really about realizing the weaknesses early on, filling out your proportions properly, putting in the work to work your strong points and weak points, and realizing them, uh, and what caused them. Realizing it's because of your anatomy, realizing it's because you didn't put in the work. Uh, and I think it's very cool to know what kind of measurements you do have in proportion to your upper body. It could be interesting to realize you have very long arms and be like, oh, that's why I can reach the top shelf. That's why I can help the grannies in the supermarket, you know. And it does also matter for your aesthetics. If you have long arms, you're probably gonna want to work extra on them to fill them out and really focus on them. And you might have been training for years and been putting in the work for your muscles, but then you realize my arm's so skinny, and then you know, oh, it's because they're long and way longer compared to my upper body, and that's why I have to put even more work and focus into them if I want big arms. This all is an example of realizing and analyzing your morphology. Not only can your morphology affect things such as the arms, it also affects things such as the legs, um, proportions, and what makes you look good and what doesn't make you look good. And that's what I'm going to be mainly talking about today in this video. So next up, as I said, proportions can create weakness. If you have long legs, more often the lever will not be the lever will be longer. If you have short legs, usually you're going to be better at squatting because it will be less difficult for you to get down because the lever of the upper leg is usually smaller. For me, I have pretty short legs and squatting is very easy for me. But I have some people in my gym who have longer legs and they seem to have more hip dominant squat. It looks more like a good morning, and that's because one, they do not have the ankle mobility, and two, they just have way more range of motion to go through, and that's often not that comfortable for them, especially with their build. So there are certain solutions and optimizations you can practice to solve these issues and still get your bodybuilding and strength goals. But it's important to realize them as people's bodies are different and uh, of course there's not a one cost solution for everyone, but a solution for someone who has long legs and cannot activate their quads properly in a normal squat is to do very quad dominant stance work on things like leg press, on things like Smith machine, where your back is supported and you can easily put your legs in front and get that more quad dominant stance without having to worry about your anatomy as much. But if you don't do that and you keep normally squatting, you're like, huh, my quads aren't growing. You'll end up with weak quads. And you're wondering, huh, I squat a lot. Squat is the most superior movement, right? Tom Platt said that. And you're like, ah, shit. It's actually because of my anatomy. And if you had realized that before, you could have realized that you need that very quad dominant stance work. Normal squats are just not going to cut it because of your anatomy. And you might have strong glutes or hamstrings from all the hip hingy squatting, which, hey, that's if you want that, that's totally still valuable, but then you can keep doing your normal squats and just put in more quad dominant leg work, and then you don't have to do glute isolation, which, hey, cool, but at least you realize your situation, you realize how you can still get your aesthetics, get your bodybuilding and hypertrophy results, even if you have a different build. So yeah, these are the torso and leg portions I talked about. If you have a short or long femur, it really changes how much you bend over, changes how much your lower back is involved, changes how much your glutes and hamstrings are activated, and how much your quads are activated. And usually it's the short femured guys, and usually shorter guys or shorter leg guys that have an easier job doing this squatting work, and will usually have a stronger squat in things like powerlifting. While the guys with long femurs and shorter torsos are better at pulling and deadlifting because the lever arm is just better. So this shows a beautiful example of how the body utilizes the angles and the mechanics of the body to be stronger at certain types of movements. So if you have short arms, you're probably going to be better at benching for power. But that's not really the goal in my channel. We mainly want bodybuilding size, strength, size, and gains. But it just shows you if you have short arms, you probably need to do more arm pull than some with long arms, because if they have longer arms, they go to more range of motion, even doing presses and pulls, and it will probably put their arms a bit more than the normal person. But they're gonna be better at pressing if they have short arms. And they're gonna be better at quad stuff if they have short legs. And that's just an example of what to look out for if you have certain proportions. And it does not mean my proportion is bad, because everything has its benefits and its negatives, and it's just important to realize and figure out what are yours and how do you need to change your program to get your optimal results in comparison to other people. You also have fat storage. This is a very small factor, but it does matter, especially in the strength world. People talk a lot about body weight, body fat, and how it can help you be stronger. And that's mainly because of it has less range of motion. It really cushions the joints, and it's not going to be at you for aesthetics, but it is important to realize where you store your body fat, how you think you look good at what body fat percentage, and getting to the body fat percentage and maintaining it. And for example, if you have a gut at 15% body fat, you're gonna need to be leaner. And if you realize it's because of your fat storage, your genetics, then you're just gonna have to bite the bullet and accept if you're going to look aesthetic, you're going to be leaner. And a lot of people store fat differently. I have a different fat storage than most people. I think my fat storage is a bit more gynoid in this circumstance. I think this actually could have a good link to the amount of androgens in your body, your testosterone, your estrogen. But I mean, I feel fine, and I actually prefer the gynoid fat storage because it's less at the waist. But honestly, I store very much all over. But I tend to see that a lot of males store their body fat in their abdominal area, and it really is unfortunate because it makes their midsection look bigger, which is of course worse for the V-taper aesthetic. But it's important to realize that fat indeed plays a role in training. If you're fatter, you're gonna get less. You're probably gonna get less injured quickly. You're gonna have a slightly smaller range of motion. Certain movements are gonna be easier. You're gonna be slightly stronger, uh, and you're gonna be usually slightly less aesthetic. So it can change a little bit how you perform movements, but it's just It's just important to understand that, hey, I might not have the same range of motion as this guy because I carry a lot more body weight, and therefore a different exercise could maybe be smart. So especially if you're quite overweight or quite bulky, you might want to change up your exercise selection to slightly differently compared to other people, because you might get less or more range of motion than you want, which will of course have different hypertrophic benefits and effects. So a good example of body morphology, which is not that applicable to lifting, but a good example of it is feet. Some people have arched feet, some people have flat feet, and usually having flat feet is bad because it prevents you from walking long. It can prevent you from walking long distances without issues. So arch feet are usually preferred. They actually test for this in the military, and that's why it's a main thing. But for swimming, people usually buy flippers if they want to swim longer and better. And fat feet would technically be better at swimming. So it's just about realizing where your strengths and weaknesses lie, and what is better for certain tasks and what is not. And the same is for lifting. So another aspect is joints and bones. These also affect your aesthetics a lot. Smaller joints and bones can give you better taper compared to the muscle. If you have very small wrists, I mean, you might look weak because your wrists are small, but it also will make your forearm look bigger in comparison. So there's a beauty and there's a beauty and a beast to everything. And since we're talking about bodybuilding, it's all about proportion. It's all about illusion. So you might have a small wrist, but it will make your forearm look big, which, hey, yeah, it has its benefits. Thicker joints and bones are also usually less injury prone, while smaller joints and bones are more injury prone. They look smaller. It's all about what you think looks better, what you think benefits you most, and just realizing what you have. I do think thicker joints and bones are superior. It's probably gives you more longevity, makes you look bigger, but don't just think about the negatives of having smaller joints and bones. As I said, it can really help with the illusion and proportion. And if you build enough muscle, you'll still look big. I also think there's some kind of truth to the story of having thicker joints means you can have more muscular potential. But it shouldn't be something that gets in your way of getting maximal gains. But it's important to realize. Don't have limiting beliefs, but realize your shortcomings and strengths, and compensate for those shortcomings so you don't have those weaknesses that you don't want. Yeah. So maybe is an example. If you want to train for hypertrophy, but you actually want to be good and strong at your exercises, but you have small joints. If you have small joints, you're usually lighter. So maybe calisthenics is more for you if you really want to be good at something while still getting your results. Yeah, that's a good example of maybe you can change up your training style a bit, looking at your anatomy. Another example is shoulders. The clavicle length usually matters a lot in looking wide and looking aesthetic. Some people have short clavicles, some people have long clavicles. Usually the long ones are preferred. And just another example of something that is just bone. It makes up your body. You also have the scapula. You can actually have a very short clavicle, which would normally make you look narrow. But if you have a wide scapula, it can actually still give you that width. So both matter, and you might not have both. So it's really about realizing the individual and what kind of, if you have a small scapula, if you have a big scapula, wide clavicle length, small clavicle length. And it's not always easy to judge. But hey, if you spam side out races, you'll probably still be wide. But yeah, so but this also matters for certain exercises. If you have a certain width, I've heard some people can struggle doing barbell curls because they're just not built for it. They might be too wide or too narrow. There's just certain exercises or certain builds of people that struggle more performing certain movements, especially if you get bigger or you're really tall. You might not fit into certain machines, and the movement will be worse for you. So it's important to realize that also maybe free weights are more applicable and better for you if that happens. And yeah, I think that's important to realize also for programming and realizing what training works for you. Another thing is waist and hips. Usually, if you want the best V taper, you want that skeletal tapering. So that means just not even your muscle, but your bones actually go out in a V shape ever so slightly. This is best achieved if you have a narrow waist and hips and wider shoulders. So if this is your base, you're probably gonna have a very wide and aesthetic V taper, which I think is very beautiful. But it's also important to realize that I think if you have a bigger waist, you should, if you have bigger waist and hips, you should invest extra time into doing ab work because hey, you're gonna have a wider waist. It's just your genetics. You need to make it look good. it's more important than people who have a small waist, because you have more space to fill up. And I think that's just another important thing to realize. You have to accept your genetics and make the best out of them. And this is a good example. I mean, I think this guy, his frame is very unfortunate, but he does still have a sick core. He would probably look worse if he had a underdeveloped core. So it's a good way to look at that. So yeah. You can also try and practice vacuums and stuff like that to make your waist smaller. I just think it's important to strive for that V-taper as much as possible. But if you don't have the genetics or aesthetics for it, you still wanna build that core nicely so it looks good. Because it's gonna draw the attention of people. It's the middle of your physique. It's gonna be quite big if you have a wider waist and hips, and you're just gonna look good anyways, bro. It doesn't matter. Fuck your genetics. Uh, if you want to if you have a very small waist and you want to keep it as small as possible, though, it could be also smart to avoid oblique work. I think working your abs is still necessary to a certain degree, but obliques, maybe your obliques are very responsive. It could make your aesthetics worse, so be a little bit careful about that. And this is all ties into it. Achieving, striving for a certain physique, no matter your body composition. But you do have to realize that there are certain uh, limitations in proportion that are caused by your skeletal structure and how you are built. So if you have wide hips and wide waist, it might just be important to realize that a dream physique with similar proportions to you might be a better thing to strive for. Although, hey, I'm not gonna tell you to not go for that stupid V-taper physique. I mean, eventually, if you do enough ladder raises, you'll get there, bro. So let's not be limiting. I just think it's important to, if you have certain weaknesses and your ideal physique has doesn't have those weaknesses, and it might be harder for you to reach those, you should work hard for them, but realize them due to how your body is structured. And if you want a dream physique that has totally different proportions to you due to bones, it might be more reasonable to strive for something that looks a little bit more like you, and will still require a ton of hard work and muscle mass to get there, but that it looks like you, kind of like the same skeletal proportion, and that will just make it a little bit more. Uh, it's like an evolution for like you're not gonna turn into a different creature, but you will turn into a way better version of your original creature. And I think that's important to realize without limiting your beliefs too much. Yep. So don't put. So we don't want to put people in boxes and what kind of body type they have. And I think body types are kind of stupid. But it could be fun to realize what kind of proportions you have, long term, short torso, and just keep those in your head and realize what you're strong at. Realizing what you're strong at could also help that process. For example, if you're really strong at deadlifts, you might have long arms and a short torso. If you're really strong at presses, you might have short arms and a thick, wide built ribcage, barrel chest. If you're just a very tall guy, you're probably gonna have long everything and be good at basketball. But I think it's important that as lifting and the natural bodybuilding community and on our knowledge on the topics um, expands, that it might be smart to actually put these into different groups, and although like, hey, bro, what's your body type? Do you have long arms, short arms? Then just give them more general knowledge and recommendations. I feel like this is already happening right now, but I still do not hear enough about the proportions. That might be because everyone has more average or similar proportions, but I think we should just pay a little bit more attention to it as we coach other people. Uh, yeah, like first ask them, hey bro, what are your proportion? What are your lift? What are your strength? And I think this does happen, but we should just emphasize it a little bit more because I think it is cool and it is unique and important to realize for your strength and size goals. And with that information, your coach and you can play to your strengths and weaknesses and fix your weaknesses to get the results you want. So this way you adjust your program to your body's needs. You realize your morphology and realize that certain variations work better for you, certain variations don't work for your body, certain variations are going to fix your weaknesses, and other variations are going to just allow your body to move in the pattern that it wants to, which is often not necessarily good for hypertrophy, but will be more better for strength or like moving the weight. You have to realize that and realize the volume you're getting. If you have long arms, you're gonna get much more arm volume from your general pressing work. So usually you have to do less isolation in that case. But maybe you have to do more isolation anyways, because hey, you have long arms and you gotta fill up those weaknesses. So it's really a experimentation and realizing your structure type of story. And you could also just realize that some lifts you are biomechanically better or biomechanically weaker, and to not fret if your friend who's way shorter bench presses like double your body bench presses way more than you, because he might just be built better for it. And it's important to realize your structure is just different. But don't make these don't use these as excuses. Use them as shortcuts and important knowledgeable traits that you can help to make your program better for your body. And just realize that certain exercises might not work for you, might not be worth your time, and that's regular basic training does not fit the needs of your body. So thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you got a better idea of how different bodies can be, how you should change your program to how your body is, and how different exercises might not work the way you expect them to, and how this can be important for your aesthetics as a bodybuilder. See you guys later.